And welcome back to Nerd Shelves. I'm Judy.
And I'm Michael.
Today we're going to show you Mercurial. This is a beautiful game published by Hyper Elixir. Thank you for sending us this game for review. You probably can also find this game at Good Games Publishing. This is a game for 1 to 4 players, and you can play 45 to 90 minutes.
Yes. Now, I have to say, though, we were lucky enough to have the Deluxe edition. So the Deluxe edition has a little sleeve on the outside of the box there.
Look at that.
And it also comes with a nice player mat, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yes.
And it also comes with dice trays and some other cool little extras.
Yeah, there's also a mini expansion comes with the game.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about detail in a minute. So why don't we start from how we play this game?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So a quick overview is basically we play the role of mages and we are trying to cast different spells using element dice that we can use on our spells. And then we have cards which are enhancements that you can manipulate your dice. And then you use those spells to cast to perform heroic actions, which are the cards at the top of the board. So basically what you do is you roll your dice, and when it's your turn, you can either take and play, which means you can either take a spell, and when you take a spell, you have to take your element dice and put them on your spell in order to be able to cast them later.
Yeah.
Or you can take an enhancement card and add it to your hand. And then you can also play an enhancement card. And these enhancement cards allow you to do things like manipulate your dice, maybe re-roll or things like that. But if you're ready, then you can cast your spells with as many of the spell cards that you have, and you can add them together. And then you get either ruin points.
Yes.
Or you get restore points. And you use those to cash them in to collect the heroic cards at the top of the board. Because what happens when you cast a spell, all of your ruin points you actually, if you have any restore points by accident, or you have a couple of restore points, you actually have to minus it off of your ruin points. They cancel each other out.
So you get lower value to get your cards.
That's right. That's right. Because some of the spell cards have ruin points and some have restore points. But if you are able to, when you cast your spell, if you are able to equal those out so they're exactly the same, which is hard to do because you have to use everything.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to omit some of your dice. You have, but if you can get those exactly the same powers, then you get equilibrium, and then there's another bonus that you get on top of that.
We'll call you master.
The master, yeah. So that's something really neat as well.
That is so cool. So hard to master that part. It's really hard.
It really is.
Yes.
Now, once in a 2-player game, and it depends on the number of players, but in a 2-player game, once somebody has collected 5 different heroic cards, the game is over.
Okay.
And then you collect points by points on your heroic cards. Plus you get points for their sigils, little symbols that you're collecting. And you can add those up for points. Yeah, so it's a little bit like the Century Spice Road and Century Golem, where you are playing your cards to kind of fulfill recipes.
Yes.
But the difference in this one is you're rolling your element dice, and you have to use those different elements to put them on your spells in order to cast them.
Yeah.
So it just adds that extra layer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very rich in those elements. Like you can utilize them and change your strategies in the middle of play, because you don't know what dice you're going to roll.
Totally.
You don't know what cards you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and anytime you cast a spell, you get to re-roll the dice. So you're stuck with those dice until you can cast a spell. So if it's not that great, well, you just kind of cast a smaller spell.
Yes.
Right? But if you can, build all of your spell cards together, then you can get major points by collecting some of the really good heroic cards.
Yeah, so you decide if you want to cast a spell in a small amount or big amount, but then you have to do it all at once. You cannot save some for later, right?
Exactly.
Tricky, yeah.
Right? So because once in a 2-player game, like I said, once somebody collects 5 cards, heroic cards, that means they've cast 5 different spells. The game's over. So, do you want to cast a bunch of little spells to get them done quickly?
Yeah.
Or do you want to wait and cast bigger spells, which give you more points?
Yes.
It's, you have to really think about that when you're playing.
Yeah. That's really cool. And I think there's so many cards that the replayability is really good.
I think so.
Really good. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, one thing I want to talk about, which is kind of neat, is when you are placing your element dice on your spell cards, you can either, some of the spots have the ability to, instead of placing a die there, you can actually use some of the blue crystals in it or the white crystals.
Yes.
Now, what's really neat about that is any blue crystal that you use, once you cast the spell, you get that back. So your blue crystals are accumulating throughout the game.
Yes.
Whereas the white crystals, once you use them, you've spent them and they're gone. But what that means is throughout the game, you're getting more and more of these blue crystals, which means by the end of the game, you're able to cast much bigger spells because when your dice run out, you can't cast any more spells. But if you can replace dice with all of these blue crystals you're accumulating, then your spells just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes. I think this game is really cool. The way they design is, it's just very smooth.
Yeah.
It might seem very overwhelmed at the beginning because there's so many things going on. So many.
Yeah.
But once you play it, it all makes sense and it's just so smooth and super fun.
Really good point, Judy. When I was trying to read the rule book, I had to actually put it down and come back to it later.
Yeah.
I read a lot of rule books. I was a little bit overwhelmed. I don't know if it's the way the rule book was written. I think it was written okay. There were just a lot of little fine points of the little iconography and this symbol does this and this symbol does something almost the same but a little bit different. And I felt a little bit overwhelmed at first.
Yeah.
But when I came back to it and then we sat down and we played it with the rule book open, it only took about 1 or 2 rounds before we were like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it now.
And the player aid, the iconography was explained on the player aid. There are a lot of them. But when we play and you look at it, you kind of just get into it and you're like, oh, I know which one to look at. It's right there. And it's explained pretty well.
I agree with you. Yeah, those player aids were actually very helpful. I have read some comments on BGG and places and some other YouTube videos where that's kind of what some people had said was, ooh, I saw this game, but is it as confusing as it looks? No. It does look overwhelming. It does feel like that when you're trying to learn it, I have to admit. But once you play, it's quite easy, actually.
Very smooth, and it makes sense once your hand gets on those. And you just need to get familiar with the name. Like every other game, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they have their own name, and that's probably the part that people get confused and a little bit intimidated.
Yeah, it uses a lot of kind of made-up names for things. For example, the blue crystals are actually called mana crystals.
Yes.
And the white crystals are called acuity crystals. So when you're reading the rules and it's take the acuity or the mana, it's, what are these? And that makes it a little bit confusing.
Intimidating.
A little bit. I have to admit. So let's talk about the art.
The art, oh my goodness. That is what catch my eye at first place. The art is by far, with all the games we've ever played, it is amazing. So cool. I know it's like kind of like fantasy, but I feel immersed into like the magic world and it's very cool art. I love it.
100%. And this is just the base game has all of that.
Yes.
All of that art. But the deluxe version has this giant playmat too, which is
so
really,
pretty.
Really cool. You don't need it though, because the cards just lay out in rows and things. But the playmat is super nice. Yeah. And it comes with these beautiful little snap together dice trays.
Yes. So cool. And they're like nice leather.
Yeah.
And velvety with the print. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The art is very detailed too.
Totally. Yeah. Everything is that the production quality is top notch.
Top notch.
I'd have
for
to say.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. Again, thank you, Hyper Elixir.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, designed by David Gold. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for giving us this opportunity to share this game
Yeah.
to everyone.
Absolutely.
This is so cool.
100%. Yeah, so good.
And that will be it for today. Until next time,
Go ahead and get another game off of your nerd shelves.
take care.
Bye.